What's up, adventurers? Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, the Green Knight. This is my co-host and research assistant, Bartholomew, and tonight I thought we would jump back into r/NeckBeard stories because Bartholomew has found something very intriguing to me. So this is a story about a gentleman who works at a theme park, which he did not name in the story, but I think you'll see when we get into it that it's pretty obvious which theme park it is. And having been briefly married to one of these adults, I think I have a unique perspective on the kind of individuals who work there and dedicate their whole lives to this company that does not give a shit about them, just wants their money. So I think this is going to be a fun story to read through. It's a little bit on the longer side, and it is part 1 of 3. So if you're new here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and ring the notification bell so you know when I go for my midnight walks or when I'm playing some midnight video games. And if you want to support the channel, we also have channel memberships now, which will give you early access to all my videos along with a few other little perks. But with all that being said, let's dive into some r/NeckBeard stories, Cringe. Don't Hug the Mascots, Part 1, Orientation. I need to tell somebody about this, and it can't be anyone who knows me in real life, because the NDA I signed is thicker than the Bible and twice as threatening. So congratulations, Reddit, you're my therapist now. Yeah, I can imagine the length of the NDA they signed because certain companies are extremely litigious, but I didn't sign an NDA, so here we go, YouTube. Let's have some fun. I worked at a theme park. I'm going to call it Adventure Cove because that's not what it's called, and you can probably figure out the rest on your own. If you've been there, you know. I have been there. I was there 4 times over the course of a less than 2-year marriage. So I have experienced a lot of what this guy's probably going to talk about. If you haven't, just picture a place that was built to sell fantasy to children and is held together behind the scenes by duct tape, mildew, and the broken spirits of 20-somethings who needed a paycheck. That's the thing, like, there's 2 types of people who work at this park. People who just needed a job and are just there to make their money. And then there's people who deliberately move to Orlando or California and dedicate their lives to the mouse. I mean, the possum. And I think that the main character in this story is one of those. I was one of those 20-somethings. I'm no longer one of those 20-somethings. I got out, but not before I met Glenn. There will be a lot of parts to this because there is a lot of Glenn. Try to keep up. I didn't apply to work at Adventure Cove because I loved the park. I didn't grow up dreaming about it. I wasn't one of those kids who cried when the character waved at them during the parade. I applied because I was 24 years old. I had just quit a job at a shipping warehouse where my supervisor called everyone Chief and smelled like beef jerky, and the park was hiring handlers at $14 an hour. A handler is the person who walks next to the character performer. You manage their break rotations so nobody faints from heat stroke. You run crowd control during meet and greets. You communicate with the performer through hand signals because they can't see or hear much of anything inside the suit. You are essentially a babysitter for a giant mascot, and I figured that had to be better than loading pallets onto a truck for a man named Gus. I was correct that it was better than working for Gus. I was incorrect about almost everything else. My first day was orientation. There were about 12 of us in a windowless conference room in the back of the admin building, sitting in plastic chairs that were designed specifically to make your ass hurt after 20 minutes. They handed us each a packet that was roughly the size of a short novel. I flipped through it while a woman named Deborah in a polo shirt with the park logo on it explained the rules. Deborah had the energy of someone who had given this speech 400 times and had died inside around speech number 12. She smiled with her mouth, but her eyes were on a beach somewhere far away. The rules, in summary: characters are never referred to as costumes or suits. They are friends. Marky is not a man in a Marky suit. Marky is Marky. Marky. If a guest asks you who's inside the suit, the answer is nobody. That's Marky. If a child asks where Marky lives, the answer is in the park, because this is his home. If an adult makes a joke about how Marky must be hot in there, you smile and redirect. At no point, under any circumstances, do you acknowledge the existence of a human being inside the character. The magic must be preserved. This was said with the kind of gravity usually reserved for national security briefings. Yeah, that's one thing I learned. Anyone who plays these characters are referred to as friends of the characters. Like, I'm friends with Peter Pan. I am friends with Marky. I looked around the room. A couple people were nodding along like they were receiving the word of God. One girl in the front row was taking notes. The guy next to me had already fallen asleep with his eyes open, which I respected. I was somewhere in the middle. I understood the assignment. Pretend the possum is real. Sure. $14 an hour is $14 an hour. Deborah moved on to safety protocols. Heat exhaustion, she explained, was the #1 hazard. Performers in full suit can only be out for 25 minutes before a mandatory break. Handlers are responsible for timing rotations and escorting the performer to the break room. If the performer gives the distress signal, both hands on head, which also looks like the performer is pretending to be surprised, which creates confusion, you are to get them off the floor immediately. People have fainted. People have thrown up inside the heads. There was a story about a performer in 2014 who passed out during a July parade and had to be dragged off the route in a golf cart while still in full character because removing the head in view of the guests would violate protocol. Deborah told us this story like she was reading a grocery list. The sleeping guy next to me was now fully unconscious. After 3 hours of Deborah, they walked us to the costume department. Backstage at Adventure Cove is a different planet from the front. Out front, it's bright colors and music and children screaming with joy. Back here, it's concrete hallways, exposed pipes, and the faint institutional smell of industrial cleaner that is not cleaning hard enough. You go through a set of double doors marked cast only, and the fantasy evaporates. Just like that. It's like walking behind a movie set and seeing the quaint little town is just plywood propped up by 2x4s. The costume department is officially called Character Wardrobe, but everyone who works there calls it the morgue. I didn't understand why until I walked in. Picture a room the size of a double garage, lit with fluorescent tubes that hum at a frequency specifically designed to make you question your life choices. Along the walls are metal shelving units, and on those shelves, staring at nothing with frozen painted grins, are the heads. Rows and rows of character heads. Marky heads, pirate heads, turtle heads, monkey heads. Foam and fur and fiberglass, each one slightly different from the next because they've been repaired and repainted at different times over the years. Some of them have visible seams. Some have scuff marks. One marky head in the corner had a dent in the left cheek that no one had bothered to fix, giving it a sort of lopsided stroke victim smile. Below the heads, hanging on industrial garment racks, were the bodies. Deflated character suits dangling limp from hangers like shed skins. A headless marky torso with his little vest and backwards cap clipped to the hanger above. A pirate suit with one arm folded across the chest like it was resting in a coffin. The fur on some was matted. Some had visible stains in the armpits and around the neckline. I didn't ask what the stains were. I didn't want to know. I still don't. And then there was the smell. I need you to understand something about the morgue. I have been trying to figure out how to put this smell into words since the day I walked out of that building for the last time, and I still haven't nailed it. But I owe it to you to try. Imagine you took a hockey bag, filled it with wet towels, left it in a hot car for 3 days, and then opened it inside a gym locker room. Now imagine that smell has been layering on top of itself since 1996. It's a living smell. It has depth. It has history. The first note is just general mildew, which is almost comforting in its familiarity. Then underneath that is a sour human funk that gets worse the closer you get to the suits. And underneath that, way at the bottom, is something I can only describe as biological. something that tells your lizard brain to leave the area. I saw one of the orientation girls gag. The note-taker from the front row covered her mouth with her orientation packet, and the sleeping guy woke up. Deborah, completely unfazed, began explaining the checkout process for the character suits while the rest of us tried not to breathe through our noses. That's when I first saw Glenn. He was in the back corner of the morgue, and I don't think he was supposed to be there during our orientation because Deborah glanced at him and made a face that suggested mild irritation. He was sitting on a metal folding chair next to one of the garment racks, and he had a marquee head in his lap. Not on a shelf, in his lap. He was doing something to the inside of it with what looked like a small brush, the kind you'd use for detail work on a painting. His focus was absolute. He did not look up when Deborah walked in. He did not acknowledge Deborah. He did not seem to be aware that 12 strangers had just entered the room and were staring at him. He was a man with a giant foam possum head in his lap and a small brush in his hand, and the rest of the universe did not exist. Okay, so Glenn is probably one of these guys who takes the job way too seriously and is in there like repairing and fixing up the marquee head on his own time because he just cares that much. He was not what I expected. When you think theme park mascot performer, you probably picture either a perky theater kid or a dead-eyed stoner. Glenn was neither. He was mid-30s, average build, slightly soft around the middle but not fat, brown hair cut short but not recently, a face so unremarkable that if you asked me to describe it from memory, I'd fail. Not ugly, not handsome, just a face that existed. Just blank slate. He was wearing the park's employee shirt, khakis, and white sneakers that were so clean they almost glowed under the fluorescence. The sneakers stood out because everything else about him was forgettable. Those sneakers were pristine, like aggressively clean. It was strange. Deborah cleared her throat. Glenn, we've got new hires doing their walkthrough. He looked up then, and the first thing I noticed was that his expression didn't change. Not annoyed, not friendly, just registering, like a security camera that's noticed movement. He looked at the group, and his eyes moved across each of us without lingering on anyone. He then looked at Deborah and said, I'm doing maintenance on the A-head. The A-head, like there was a hierarchy among the marquee heads. Like this particular foam possum skull was the starting quarterback and the others were all backups. Deborah visibly chose not to engage with this and continued the tour. As we moved through the room, I caught Glenn looking at me. Not the group, at me specifically. Just for a second, and then back to his brush and the inside of the possum. I didn't think much of it. I should have, but I didn't. The rest of orientation was a blur. We toured the tunnels, which are the service corridors that run under the park. They are exactly as glamorous as you'd imagine. Concrete, fluorescent, damp in places. Performers use them to move between zones without being seen by guests in their half-dressed state. There are golf carts down there that zip around blind corners at speeds that are probably illegal somewhere. One of them almost hit our group, and the driver, a maintenance guy, just yelled, "Watch it, cherries!" without slowing down. Deborah explained that new hires are called cherries. Nobody asked why. We were given our assignments at the end of the day. Each handler is paired with a specific performer. You shadow them, learn their rhythm, manage their rotations. Some handlers get reassigned after training, some don't. The pairings are supposed to be random, but veteran handlers had already told me during lunch that they're not. Yeah, they probably get to pick people they want. The difficult performers get the new hires because nobody else wants to deal with them. My assignment card said, character, Marky, primary. Oh, he's the best Mickey. Marky, sorry. Performer, Glenn R. Start Monday, 8 a.m. That's early because the parks don't usually open until 9. So yeah, you gotta get there and get them all set up and ready to go. The girl next to me got Shelly the Turtle. She looked relieved. The sleeping guy got Captain Goldbeer. He didn't seem to care. I stared at my card and then stared at the girl who'd done the assignments and said, Is there any particular reason I got the main character on my first week? She looked at me with an expression that I would come to recognize as the Adventure Cove employee's universal face of practiced pity. Glenn requested a new handler, she said. You're it. He requested me specifically? He requested a new one. You're the new one. She paused, and then added in a voice that was trying very hard to sound casual, Glenn is great. He's our best Marky. You'll learn a lot. Yeah, I'll bet he's the best. Probably super dedicated to it. He probably has like all of Marky's mannerisms like just memorized down to a T. Every single like little movement and stuff like that. Some of these people get very into it. There was something in the way she said, you'll learn a lot, that sounded less like encouragement and more like a condolence. I pocketed the card and walked to my car. My first Monday arrived and I reported to the morgue at 7:30 a.m. Glenn was already there. Of course he was. He was already in the lower half of the suit, the legs and torso piece, which made him look like a man who was being slowly consumed by a possum from the feet up. The Marky head, the A head, was on a bench beside him, freshly brushed, its frozen grin gleaming under the fluorescence. He was eating a granola bar. Just a man in possum legs eating a granola bar in a room that smelled like a decade of accumulated human funk. Normal morning. He looked at me and said, "You're the new handler." It was not a question. I confirmed that I was. He nodded once, took another bite of his granola bar, and said, "First shift is character lane, 9 to 9:25, break, then 9:45 to 10:10. After that, we gotta walk around through Frontier Basin. Back for lunch, and then 1:30 show. I need you to stay on my left. Always left. Marky's good side is his right, and guests approach from the right, which means you manage the queue from the left. Don't stand behind me, because I can't see behind me, and the tail has a wide sweep radius. And if I do this," he put both hands flat against his thighs and pressed once. "That means I need a break immediately. If I do this," he tapped his right hand against his chest twice. "That means there's a guest issue and I need you to intervene. If you see me tilt my head to the left and hold it, I'm overheating and you need to get me off the floor within 2 minutes or I'm going to pass out. Do you have any questions?" I did not have questions. I had a sinking feeling. This was not a man who treated his job like a job. This was a man who had mapped every square foot of his domain and expected his support staff to operate at the same level. He looked at me the way a surgeon looks at a new scrub nurse. I was being assessed, and I hadn't even started. "What's your name?" he asked. I told him. He considered this for a moment, chewing his granola bar, and then said, "I'll probably just call you Handler." Not in a rude way exactly, more like my actual name was unnecessary information. I was the handler. That was my function. My identity beyond that was not relative to the operation. "Sure," I said, "handler works." He finished his granola bar, folded the wrapper into a perfect square, and then placed it in his pocket. Then he picked up the A-head with the gentleness that I had never seen applied to a foam object before. He cradled it the way you cradle something alive, something fragile. He lifted it over his head and lowered it down, and Glenn disappeared. Just like that. The forgettable man with the clean sneakers was gone, and in his place was Marky. 6 feet of grinning, cartoonish possum in his little vest and a backwards baseball cap, tilting his oversized head at me with a goofiness that I absolutely was not prepared for. Because here's the thing, and I need to be honest about this, because if I'm not, the rest of these stories won't make sense. Glenn was good. He was really, genuinely, annoyingly good. The second that head went on, something happened to him. The posture changed. The way he moved changed. He went from a slightly soft, forgettable man with a clean sneakers to a character. Marky bounced. Marky tilted his head. Marky did a little shuffle step that made the kids who were waiting in line absolutely lose their minds when he went out into the character lane 20 minutes later. A little girl ran up and hugged Marky around the legs, and Marky put both hands on his cheeks in an exaggerated surprise and then gently patted her on the head, and the girl's mom teared up. Actually teared up. I stood there on his left side, managing the queue, watching a man in a foam possum suit make a woman cry with a head pat, and I thought, okay, I get why they put up with him. Yeah, if the performers are super dedicated, they can make it come alive for the kids, and that's why you're not supposed to ruin the magic by saying that there is a performer inside. And the amount of like grown adults that I see who like tear up when they go to these places, it's insane. Like they are so brainwashed and bought into the hype, and the company knows it's not just people with kids now, it's millennials who have money and no kids, and they are aggressively marketing to them because these people come and they try and like reclaim their childhood or whatever, and they spend hundreds of dollars. This sweater was like $100, and I had to buy it because it got super cold one night. I didn't yet know what putting up with him would come to mean. That first shift was smooth, professional even. He hit his marks. He managed the crowd with his body language better than I managed it with my words and my earpiece. He stayed on schedule without me having to prompt him once. When the 25-minute timer hit, he gave the goodbye wave, Marky's signature double-handed wave with a little hip wiggle, and walked off the floor towards the tunnel entrance without breaking character until we were fully out of sight. Then the head came off. His face was red and sheeted with sweat. His hair was plastered to his forehead in wet strips. He was breathing so hard through his mouth in short, sharp bursts, and the air that came out of the head when he removed it hit me like opening an oven. It was hot and wet and smelled like the inside of a mouth. Not a specific mouth, just mouth. Brother, The concept of mouth weaponized and made airborne. I took a step back involuntarily. Oh man, I can't imagine being in those costumes for hours, man. Like even just having to wear the helmet at work for like 2 minutes is long enough. He didn't seem to notice. He set the head down carefully on the bench in the fishbowl, positioning it so it faced outward, and then sat down next to it. Yeah, he's probably like so used to that smell by now. He pulled out a water bottle from his bag, took 3 measured sips, not 4, not 2, 3, capped it, and then turned to me. "Notes," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "Notes. From the shift. How'd I do? What did you see from your angle?" He was asking me for a performance review. He was sitting there, drenched in sweat, in a room that smelled like hot breath and Febreze, with a foam possum head staring at me from the bench. He wanted to know how his performance was. I looked at the head looked at me. Its grin had not changed. It would never change. It was permanent, frozen, lidless grin that would outlast us both. "You were great, man," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. The kids loved it. He looked at me the way a teacher looks at a student who just gave a book report without reading the book. Not angry, disappointed. "I need specifics," he said. "Was the cue flow smooth? Did anyone approach from my blind side? How was my spacing during the photo setups? Was there a moment when the energy dipped?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. I opened it again. "Dude," I said, "it's a possum suit." The silence that followed is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He didn't get mad. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with an expression of such profound, personal hurt that for a moment I felt like I'd insulted his mother. He set the water bottle down, turned to face the Marky head on the bench, and said very quietly, "It's not a possum suit. It's Marky." I knew then, in the fishbowl, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, with a foam possum grinning at me from 3 feet away, that this job was going to be more than I signed up for. I just didn't know how much more. Not yet. I'd figure it out, though. Glenn would make sure of that. that's enough for now. I've got more, a lot more. I'll be back when I've recovered enough to write about what happened the following week, when Glenn discovered that someone had used the bee head for a birthday party appearance without his authorization. I won't spoil it, but I will tell you that I learned that day that a grown man can cry about a foam possum head and mean it. Yeah, so this guy sounds like he's very invested in the job, and yeah, of course that would translate to a good performance, but yeah, it's the delusion that these people buy into every time they go to the parks. They don't see a guy dressed as Aladdin or a guy dressed as Captain Hook. That's them. That is the character. And they get so obsessed with it. You are just a dude playing a character, and like these parks, it's a whole nother level, man. Like they literally they work their ass off to sell the magic, and it makes grown people cry. Grown women, grown men, adults. And it's insane how bought into this delusion these people get. And I just can't imagine making that like your whole life. Like, I'm invested though. I want to hear more about this Glenn character and see how crazy he gets about his dedication to playing Marky the Possum, and what sort of shenanigans he gets up to in the next 2 parts, because there are 2 more parts to read through. They didn't do anything too crazy this time. I think we're just getting set up to see how invested he is, and I'm invested. So if you guys want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the notification bell so you know when that comes up. I might intersperse this with other Reddit stories, like Am I the Antagonist? I might do some Am I Overreacting or Nice Guys or something in between. But yeah, stick around for part 2 of Don't Hug the Mascots and Glenn the Marky the Possum Neckbeard. But I think that's going to be all for me and Bartholomew tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to drink lots of water, do some push-ups, and stay safe. Till next time.